In this video, we are going to talk about Steve Jobs' untold advice to get rich. So before starting this video, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for the future updates. Software engineer Randy Adams initially turned down Steve Jobs' offer to work at Next, the computer company started by Jobs after his ouster from Apple. It was 1985. Adams wasn't ready to go back to work after selling his pioneering desktop software publishing company. Within a few days, Jobs was on Adams' answering machine. "You were blowing it, Randy. This is the opportunity of a lifetime, and you're blowing it." Adams reconsidered. Adams, using some of the cash he'd earned from the sale of his company, bought a Porsche 911 at the same time Jobs did. To avoid car door dings, they parked near each other, taking up 3 parking spaces between them. One day Jobs rushed over to Adams' cubicle and told him they had to move the cars. I said, "Why?" And he said, "Randy, we have to hide the Porsches. Rossborough is coming by and thinking of investing in the company, and we don't want him to think we have a lot of money." They moved the cars to the back of Next's offices in Palo Alto, California, and Perot invested $20 million in the company in 1987 and took a seat on the board. Adams recalls the time Bill Gates showed up at Next for a meeting. The receptionist downstairs called Jobs, who sat upstairs, to let him know Gates was in the lobby. I could see him sitting in his cube, not really busy. But he didn't get up or call Gates up. He left him waiting in the lobby for an hour. That speaks to their rivalry. Next engineers, Adams said, took the opportunity to go downstairs and ply Gates with questions. "We enjoyed it and spent an hour talking to him until Steve finally called him in." Adams said he left Next after disagreeing with Jobs about the use of the optical drive in the Next workstation, which he felt would be too slow. Sometime later, Jobs convinced Adams to start a software business around Next, which he did with a $2 million investment from Sequoia Capital. But as the business was underway, Jobs called Adams again to let him know that Next was going to give up its workstation business and focus instead on software. Scuff marks in the mini store. In his first public appearance after revealing he had surgery to remove a pancreatic tumor in 2004, Jobs met with reporters, including me, at the Stanford Shopping Center in Palo Alto to unveil a new 750 SQFT mini store design. Half the size of an Apple retail store, the Mini featured an all-white ceiling, lit from behind Japanese stainless steel walls, with holes around the top for ventilation that mimic the design of the Power Mac G5, and a shiny, seamless white floor made with material used in aircraft hangars, Jobs said at the time. Before the curtain draped across the storefront came down, though Jobs was having a meltdown, refusing to step outside and greet reporters. Why? Because the store design that looked so great on paper didn't stand up to real-world use. The walls showed off every handprint, and the floors had black scuff marks from the handful of people readying the store for the big reveal. Jobs was ultimately convinced to step outside, and the curtain was drawn. When I saw the floor, I turned to Jobs, standing next to me, and asked if he had been involved in every aspect of the design. He said yes. It was obvious that whoever designed the store had never cleaned a floor in their life, I told him. He narrowed his eyes at me and stepped inside. A few months later, an Apple executive told me that Jobs had all the designers return to the store after it opened and spend the night on their knees cleaning the white surface. After that, Apple switched to the stone tiles now prevalent in its designs. I tell him what I think, which is extremely negative. When I'm done, he turns to the guy. Though he looks back at me. And then he says, "Guy, this is the CEO of Nowhere." A little hand in the screen. Bushnell says what he remembers most about Jobs was his intensity. "Steve was the first guy I found who would be regularly curled up under his desk in the morning after an all-nighter. A lot of people think that success is luck and being in the right place at the right time. But I think if you're willing to work harder than anybody else, you can create an awful lot of your own luck." We tended to have this philosophical relationship. He liked to talk about big ideas and where they come from. He was always interested in talking about creating products and how do you know when a product is ready for market. In the early 1980s, Bushnell bought a 15,000 SQFT house in Paris and invited his Silicon Valley friends to a housewarming party. There was a band, lots of food and drink, lavishly attired guests, and Jobs, who had left Atari to start Apple in 1976. While everyone else was dressed up for the party, Jobs showed up in his Levi's. Bushnell remembers sitting on the left bank the day after the party, me sipping coffee, and Steve always drinking tea, sort of watching Paris walk by. We had a delightful conversation about the importance of creativity. He was at a phase where he knew that Apple II was nearing the end of its life. He was not happy with Apple III. He was starting to kick around ideas for Lisa and what was going to be Macintosh. We were talking about trackballs and joysticks and mice, and the whole idea of having a little hand in the screen, which is essentially what the mouse was. I last saw him a year before his death. He was very, very thin, but he didn't look frail. He had a strength about him. He said, "I think I'm going to beat this thing." A friend in need. Roizen's company D/Maker distributed software for the Mac in the 1980s. She had many experiences with jobs she would call character building, but one was more personal. On March 1, 1989, Steve called to talk about negotiation, and as it was Steve, I took the call, even though I had learned the night before that my father had died suddenly while on a business trip in Paris. When I told Steve, he said, "Why are you working? You need to go home. I'll be right over." I had sofas, but Steve didn't like to sit on sofas. He asked me to talk about my father, what was important about him, what I loved best about him. Steve's mother had passed away a few months earlier, so I think he was particularly attuned to how I felt and what I needed to talk about. I will always remember and appreciate what an incredible thing he did for me in helping me grieve. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and wanted to hear from me again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go. Thanks for watching.